Welcome to Refinery Injury Podcast.
Hello, and welcome back to the Refinery Injury Podcast with Brooks Harrison. Brooks is a Texas trial attorney dedicated to representing refinery and plant workers who suffer catastrophic injuries in explosions, fires, and chemical accidents across the South. I'm Heidi Mack, and in today's episode, we're going to be talking about what families need to know when a refinery accident takes a loved one's life. So, Brooks, thank you for coming. Thanks for joining us and giving us your information here today.
Thank you so very much, Heidi. Glad to be here.
Wonderful. Well, let's get to it here. When something serious happens, when a deadly accident happens, what tends to unfold in those first few days for these families that are left behind?
Well, generally speaking, and actually I'm putting together a little book to actually help cover that. And I'll go over that here in a little bit, or at least try to get that in. Um, Whenever a catastrophic event occurs, it's pretty much chaotic for whatever families that's involved, whether or not there's direct children involved, or whether or not it's just a wife or a girlfriend or whatever it may be. First thing that happens, everybody's immediately worries about is, obviously for the safety of their loved one, but the immediacy after that, once they're stabilized, unless they're killed in the event, once they're stabilized, then the focus becomes economic. And that's one of the things that my firm is very cognizant and very aware of. And we have vendors, we have folks that are trusted that we've worked with for decades that come in and do help alleviate the financial stresses of the family. We also work to make sure any of our clients, no matter what, I don't care what insurance says, I don't care what anybody else says, we make sure our clients get 100% of the medical care they need. Sometimes what they want. I mean, I had one client that it was related to the incident. It was kind of a subset of the incident, but she needed her teeth replaced, so she needed implants in her mouth, and that was something that yes, we connected to the incident, but it wasn't something we probably could get held up in trial. We ended up settling the case right before trial, but yeah, her $60,000 worth of implants in her mouth was essentially covered at the end of the day. So that's what we do. We try to make sure it's a comprehensive medical coverage for our clients.
So, yeah, you were talking, that was about like a claim, like an accident claim, but, with people that have not faced this before, what makes this different, this refinery wrongful death different from some of those other cases like you had just mentioned?
All right. Well, the refinery wrongful death is first of all, the refinery setting by itself is an absolutely completely different setting than anything else that you're ever going to be involved in. A refinery setting is a massively hazardous setting in the first place. So the folks that are going out there to work, there's not a bunch of wallflowers working out there. They're aware of the risk. They just don't want to be put at any additional risk. Families know that too, but it's no matter how much you know and what your expectations are. Um, a catastrophic injury and a catastrophic death are something that families are forced to deal with, and it's something they usually never get over. Again, that's part of what my job is to help them in that process of healing, and what that's healing emotionally and financially and otherwise.
So then, when you do help these clients, when how soon do the investigators and company representatives, how soon do they get involved with something when there is this fatal refinery accident?
Right. Immediately is when they begin their root cause analysis immediately. They have legal requirements of contacting regulators such as OSHA, uh, chemical safety boards, another, and it just depends on what type of injury or what type of incident it is that triggers which regulatory agency. So that kind of depends, but yes, no, the company is immediately uh, doing everything they possibly can to rally the troops, start interviewing everybody in the region or involved, and I mean, just like anybody else, they're looking to characterize the incident in the best light possible for themselves. I think that might be human nature, but it's definitely a big factor in the greed process out at the refineries. They're always looking to cut corners. They're always looking to not pay out. So this is just after an incident. That's just another example of them looking at the bottom line. And no matter how sweet or kind and wonderful they may be, whenever they try to address the families of some of these injured and deceased workers, no matter how kind they seem, uh, the bottom line is still the bottom line, and that's all they really care about.
So then, since they get involved so fast, sometimes families they might hesitate to reach out because they're grieving as well, like you just said. Um, so I'm assuming then timing then does really matter to reach out to someone like you.
Absolutely, timing matters. I mean, the sooner that we get in and we get our experts in and participating in it, that's the thing. Whenever we get brought in, we go file a TRO, we stop their investigation, and we're forced to be allowed in. So we get to come in, we get to bring our experts in, and we don't get to control the investigation, but we certainly get to view it, and we get to participate in it. So that at the end of the day, that's the ideal case is the family signs up with us the day of the incident and gets us involved the day of the incident, so they don't have a head start. I mean, because truly they have a head start. It's their facility, it's their investigation, and I mean, I have clients that'll come a year later, and that makes obviously makes the lawyer's job much more difficult, but that's part of what we do for a living. So what we do is we bring in our experts and essentially unwind and basically go in with a scalpel and go through their investigation and try to determine whether or not this is legitimate, whether or not they kind of glossed over certain issues, to go ahead and then we will actually come out with our own report, and so and that will be something that is involved in the litigation of the case.
I mean, if I was grieving something like this, I would definitely want if you're gonna be nitpicking our lives, I would rather have somebody that we trust, that we chose, rather than, their investigators, like you said. So when you do start doing that, what is the evidence that you start like, what evidence matters the most? You were talking a little bit about it there.
The number one evidence is my client and what his body or her body and the shape that they're in, their medical issues. That's number one evidence. Number two, I mean, it just depends. It depends whether or not it was a fuel fed fire burn, or whether it was some sort of mechanical failure, or whether or not it was a falling object, what happens all the time. I mean, that's why personal protective gear is so important, and wearing hard hats. But it really just depends case by case. And what saying that, every single one of my cases, I don't bring my same team to every single case. Um, so if I have a thermal burn case, not a chemical burn, a pure thermal burn, because something was released, fire, something sparked. We have a fire, somebody gets severely burned, multiple people get severely burned. What I essentially do is I have a good core group of attorneys who have specialties, kind of like myself. I kind of specialize in these refinery accidents. I don't specialize in every single type of refinery accident. So what I do is I build the team around me, essentially build that client their own law firm based around their set of facts and their injuries.
Interesting, because I mean, you saying you have, all your sub lawyers, I mean, not to call them like that, but, when the other side with the refineries, they also have their complex layers of contractors and subcontractors. So then how does that work determining who's legally responsible, with those several companies tied in at the same site?
That is why us being involved in that investigation is so important. I mean, is it the premise owner? Did the premise owner do something wrong and injure all the contractors? Was it one of the 30 contractors in the unit that created the conditions that hurt the people? It just depends. You can I've had cases where it ended up being none of the contractor's fault whatsoever. It was solely the responsibility of the premise owner. I've had cases where the premise owner did everything right, and it was one or two of the contractors out there. So it's really truly a case by case situation when it comes to liability. I mean, obviously, our job is to try to attach liability across the board to as many folks as we possibly can. If anybody played a part in creating that condition that hurt everybody, then that's our job is to connect those dots and make them liable. Um, so we're our my job is to go and try to get every single responsible party and then hold them accountable. And the hold them accountable is by making them pay.
Yes, it is. We were talking about a little bit earlier, how they get involved so fast. Do you see that in your history here of is that one of the common mistakes, or are there other misunderstandings that hurt a case for a family, like say signing, a document because they did trust these nice people that called them?
That happens, and I hate to say this, but it happens more times than not. Um, I mean, you work with these people, you have a relationship with these people. They you may be in a bowling league with these people. And no, and that's the difficult part is being able to separate the personal and the professional, and that gets mixed quite a bit, especially in a job in such a lifestyle as working out at the refineries.
So, like you said, Brooks, you're going to make them pay, and again, obviously, though, financial compensation does not replace a person ever, but can help with the stability of the family afterwards when they lose that person. What are the types of damages that are usually available in this wrongful death case? How are they determined?
Well, it's that's I'm glad you actually asked that because your past damages, your future damages, your lost wages, past and future, um, your pain and suffering. And then obviously we jump into gross negligence. Um, that's one thing that I'll probably be talking about on a lot of these shows in the future, is we're actually in the process of trying to put together a nice little book or handbook for workers and their families. And I'm not asking any or wanting anybody to have to go read it, but they can definitely use it as a reference. And part of that is we'll go through the historical context of the industry. We'll talk about common hazards and risk. We'll go through the major incidents and accidents that have happened over the last 15, 20 years out there as well. Then we'll go over regulations and compliance, basically governmental entities and localities and states and what their role is in it and how they regulate it. And then that's when we get to worker rights, health impacts, and those types of statistics. And then we'll go into how to prevent things. And then we'll actually go in depth on damages. And well, if anybody, I'll make sure I put a chart in there so everybody can go through and say, we always talk about damages. It's a little more complicated than that, and so that way they'll have them a chart, and they'll be able to go through, and they'll be able to during this type of incident, this is what is available to me. So it'll be more of an informative thing, and the goal is to educate and give folks the ability to answer their own questions before they get to me, and at least have a bit of consistency whenever we do visit.
Well, yeah, thanks, Brooks, because I'm not connected to any kind of refinery, but I enjoy knowing about history, and I always find that fascinating because I don't want to, dig in the ground. Those jobs are very dangerous. Any kind of refinery work I already know is a dangerous career. So, um, I appreciate you putting that information out there. I think that's a great way to end this podcast today. Is you giving that information about what you're about to do with this book. I think that's really, really honorable.
Thank you so very much, and thank you for having me.
And that's it for today's episode of the Refinery Injury Podcast with Brooks Harrison. If your family has lost someone in a refinery or a plant accident, visit refineryinjury.com to learn more about your options and how Brooks and his team can help. Thank you again for listening, and don't forget to subscribe, share, and leave a review if you found this helpful.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button and leave us a review in the comments.